because when the creditor lends you, definitely for them they need to make profit. And we see that in financial year 2022-23, we see that government incurred over 9-point-something trillion towards commitment fees. So when you look at these funds, they can actually fund the entire human capital development program, like we've seen in our current budget. Well, of course, it is slightly higher, but we still see the World Bank telling us that our human capital index is very low, at about 38%, implying that with the current state of education and health in Uganda, government is going to, like our children are only 38%, are likely to be 38% productive in the future. So investing in human capital, of course, is increasingly, of course, government is committed to investing in human capital, but the debt repayment and servicing obligations are increasingly widening, thus affecting these critical spending sectors. And when you look at the background to the budget for this particular financial year, we are seeing that for every 100 shillings collected in financial year 24-25, the coming financial year, 40% of the domestic revenues will be channeled to pay debt servicing. So it implies that we are only left with 60% to spend on other sectors. And of course, this figure does not include the maturing domestic debt or the redemptions that are going to occur. So that is the reason why citizens need to worry, and why we actually say that as we pay the fair share of our taxes, as we call upon our citizens, our fellow civil society members, each of us has an obligation to pay the tax. But of course, government borrows because they don't have the money right now to actually offer some services, so they opt to borrow to pay in future using the tax. So if we don't monitor our debt-funded projects, it means that the payments are going to disturb us as a nation. I think it was in the month of February where we saw Moody's coming out to tell us that our outlook is being downgraded. Why? Simply because of the increasing unpredictability and the reduction in the wide range of portfolio from which we can borrow. Why? In the previous financial years, government has really relied on domestic borrowing. But also, when you look at our frameworks and the laws that govern public debt management, they are very clear on what thresholds we shouldn't surpass as a nation, but increasingly some of the key thresholds are breached. I remember the last public debt management framework had a threshold on interest payments as a percentage of revenue. It required that this shouldn't go beyond 12.5%, but by the end of the framework period, we had reached about 18%. So this clearly shows the impact of debt on the revenues that we collect. So increasingly, if we don't monitor the debt-funded projects, if we don't task our government to actually make sure that debt is only acquired for ready projects, and of course, which kind of debt do we borrow? Because we've seen an increase in borrowing on non-concessional terms, which is not bad, but for what projects are we borrowing on non-concessional terms? Yeah. So what we need to see, all we need is implement our policies and our programs such that debt is put to the right use. Maybe there is a day when it will come and we don't have debt if we actually gently mobilize our resources well through our domestic revenue mobilization strategy. Of course, it's not common across the entire world. I know several government officials will tell us that, you know, when you compare Uganda's debt to other countries' debt, ours is better. Yes, but we need to see to what effect the human rights approach to debt, what burden has debt imposed on our nation. So in a nutshell, that's it from us, but also clearly looking at key regional integration processes. On the part of debt, there is something in the East African Monetary Union Protocol that requires having a common framework or a law on debt management. So that is a humble plea to government of Uganda. You can champion this to push forward, to call upon other EAC partner states, because we've seen many of these are diverging from the fiscal rules in the protocol. So still also on debt management, we've seen this not being adhered to in some states like Kenya, where their debt to GDP in real terms is over 68%. Of course, ours as Uganda is not yet there, beyond the 50% threshold, but we increasingly see that with the increasing debt burden, it would be a problem.
A round of applause for Mrs. Hilda Mukuru Tumuhe from the Debt and Aid Analysis Desk of Siatini. Interesting conversations, really. Sometimes we use the indicator that may not speak to citizens. They may speak to us in government. I think we've spent the last 10 years trying to encourage government to avoid the debt to GDP comparison. It does not speak to the realities. You'd rather talk of debt to tax, because it is actually tax that is being depleted by debt, and then the citizens are asking, where is the result? I paid my taxes. But of course we know debt payment takes the first call. So the first money I send to URA is going to be sent to debt. Then there is nothing left to do my road. And me, you can't tell me I paid your debt, I'm sustainable. I'm asking about my road, I'm asking about my health facility. The moment those are not worked out, you begin to see how we should relate debt and tax revenues and service delivery, as opposed to a mere debt to GDP, which may not speak to the realities. Extreme end is Samuel. Samuel, I want to bring you ahead of Mr. Kagwa, because he's the one who gives you the tasks to do. So certainly your supervisor cannot speak ahead of you, but this is the only opportunity you have to tell the supervisor some of the things you have asked me to bring are crocodile teeth. How do I get them? The crocodiles are very jealous, aggressive animals to collect taxes from. We want to hear from you, from the domestic side, really. What are those tax amendments that are being introduced in Uganda, in the regime, to support how the support amendments? Basically, the conversation on improving domestic resource mobilization, from where you sit, what you see, and what you don't see.
Thank you, moderator, and good afternoon, dear listeners. First of all, I would like to bring apologies from my commissioner. She was unable to come, and so she asked me to represent her. Samuel Timothy, a male, acting manager, policy, rulings and interpretations from the Domestic Taxes Department. One of our mandates is to advise government on the policy measures, and so I'm going to take you through the policy measures for this financial year, and these are in the Income Tax Act, VAT Act, TPCA, and in the stamp duty. Now, it's important to note that these amendments have not yet been assented to by the President, but we hope that he's going to assent to them very soon. One of the objectives of these amendments is to broaden the tax base. We also hope to improve on compliance, but also hope to incentivize trade by facilitating movement of capital and persons across the borders. And you'll notice that there are some changes that are intended to facilitate that. And so when we look...
Samuel, can you bend your mic?
Yes, okay, thank you. So in the Income Tax Act, they've expanded the definition of the retirement fund to include other funds that were not previously catered for, and this is intended to attract more players in the pension fund. And so now we have they've added a fund set up to provide for terminal benefits to members, and also other agreements that are not catered for. Then they've introduced an exemption on the income of private equity and venture capital. This is to encourage the growth of alternative sources of funding for private investment. And then they've introduced an exemption on the income, an exemption on disposal of government securities on the secondary market to encourage the buying and selling of government securities on the secondary market. And then as a way of mitigating the impact of climate change, in the discussion there was an issue that one of the major concerns of the EAC is climate change. They've introduced a 10-year exemption for manufacturers of electric vehicles, electric battery charging equipment, and also the fabricators of the bodies of these electric vehicles. Now, these there are different bands for an investor who is a foreigner. They'll be required to invest at least 10 million United States dollars. And for a citizen here meaning a citizen of Uganda and a citizen of the EAC, they will be expected to invest at least 300,000 US dollars within Kampala, and then upcountry is 150. Now they are expected to also use at least 70% of raw materials sourced locally, subject to availability, and also employ at least 70% of citizens, 70% of citizens earning 70% of the wage bill. This is to create employment for the citizens of the EAC partner states. Another exemption that has been introduced is a 10-year exemption for the hospital developers of specialized hospitals. The conditions for income tax are the same as the conditions for the developers of, for the manufacturers of motor vehicles. Then the branch concept, we've replaced the branch concept with a permanent establishment concept. Now, a permanent establishment is in relation to taxation of non-residents, taxing active income of non-residents. And so to widen the scope and deal with aggressive tax planning, they've widened the scope of a branch and clarified what qualifies as a branch and what does not qualify as a branch. I'm not going to go into the details, but those are the, for the branch, that is what has happened. And then, just a minute. They've introduced 10% withholding tax on the commission earned by agents, commission agents, after the introduction of the National Payment Systems Act. You'll notice that there was withholding tax on the income for mobile money, but for the other agents, the other agents like Wave, those other payment platforms, there was no withholding tax. So this is to try and level the ground. Now this exemption, this withholding also covers agent banking and other service providers. Now, when it comes to VAT, they've introduced an obligation for a person who receives proceeds from an auction to account for VAT on these proceeds. And this does not mean that it will be the auctioneer, because last year, as you all recall, there was an obligation for an auctioneer to account for the proceeds of an auction. Now this year, they've changed it that the recipient of these proceeds is the one who is going to account for this VAT. Now, This means that if, for example, URA engages an auctioneer to auction off goods, it's going to be required the auctioneer will account for VAT on his auction fees, but also URA will be required to account for VAT on the proceeds from the auction. Now, to facilitate this process, we are making adjustments to our IFRIS and also in e-tax, the return template for VAT will have a provision for both registered and unregistered persons to account for this VAT from the auction. Then they've also, an employer will be required to account for VAT on goods that are donated to their employees. This is just a clarification that if you donate, maybe if you have a warehouse, you're dealing in taxable supplies, let's say cement, and you decide to donate a bag of cement to your employee, you'll be required to account for VAT on that donation. The other change in the VAT Act is that they've introduced VAT on postage stamps, supply of software and equipment installation services to manufacturers, introduced VAT on services incidental to telemedicine and royalties paid in respect of agricultural technologies. Now, these were previously exempt, but in a bid to raise revenue, they have introduced VAT on them. And then also, there was a loophole. There was an exemption on supplies to contractors and subcontractors of hydropower, geothermal, wind, and biogas projects. There was an exemption on supplies to them. But there was an abuse because they were importing some of domestic items, boxers, liquor, which have nothing to do with the projects. And so the provision in this year's amendment is to clarify that VAT will apply on such supplies. And then the threshold, I need to clarify that the threshold for VAT has been uplifted. Threshold for claiming a refund has been uplifted from 5 to 10 million, and it's hoped that this will relieve the small taxpayers because usually when you apply for a refund, we audit you, but with uplifting of this threshold, it is hoped that the small taxpayers will not be, there will be some relief from them. And then the supply of electric vehicles, electric battery charging equipment, and also the supply of the frame locally manufactured will also be exempt from VAT, and this is to promote industrialization, but also to mitigate, as you notice, people are moving away from fossil fuels, and so we need to look at the technologies that will facilitate that. And then on safety gear, supply of safety gear, there is an exemption, VAT exemption on supply of safety gear. And then supply of cooking stoves that use ethanol, there is also a VAT exemption, but this exemption will expire on 30th June 2028. And then for the manufacturers of electric vehicles, they also have an exemption in the manufacturers of electric vehicles have an exemption in VAT on supply of feasibility studies, supply of locally produced construction materials, supply of locally produced inputs, and this is in line with government's policy on BUBU, saying build Uganda, buy Uganda. And the conditions for VAT exemption for these persons are the same as for income tax, so I will not go back into that. And then in the excise duty amendments, they've reduced rates for some of the products there. There are new rates. We have new rates on opaque beer, any other alcoholic beverage, and kombucha. The new rates are going to be 10,000 or 150 per liter, whichever is higher, and this is to encourage consumption of these. The reason these ones have a lower rate is because they expect the manufacturers to use locally produced raw materials, so it's expected that this will boost the incomes of the farmers by encouraging consumption of locally produced raw materials. And then we've introduced excise duty on powdered beer. Powdered beer, the excise duty is shillings 2,500. Now I need to clarify on a misconception that is going around in the publication that this is a raw material for the beer manufacturers. This is actually not a raw material. It is a finished product. But what happens is that you buy the product, take it to your home, add water, and you let it sit for about 24 hours, and after that, it's ready to drink. So it's not the raw materials for the manufacturers, but it's actually a finished product. So that will attract excise duty of shillings 2,500. Sorry. And then on alcohol, they've introduced undenatured alcohol. Sorry. So on spirits, they've introduced excise duty of shillings 100 or shillings 2,500 on undenatured spirits of alcoholic volume 80% made from imported raw materials. And then for the others, the ready to drink, what we would call ready to drink undenatured. Undenatured basically means that the alcohol is fit for consumption. So for alcohol, where the alcoholic strength by volume is less than 80%, the excise duty is 80% or shillings 1,700 per liter, whichever is higher. Now this may point to the likes of Uganda Waraji, the Johnny Walkers. That would be the excise duty rate on that. And then for imported wines, they are going to attract an excise duty of 100% or 10,000 shillings, whichever is higher. But for juices made of at least 30% pulp or at least 30% by weight or volume of the total composition from locally grown fruits and vegetables, these are exempt from excise duty. But for those ones that do not meet these conditions, they will pay excise duty of 10% or 250 shillings per liter, whichever is higher. This is down from the 12% or 250 shillings per liter that was there previously.
2 more minutes.
Yes, okay. I think to wrap it up, since the amendments were quite many for excise duty, I think I'll not be able to go through them. I need to specify that there is a waiver that we need to take advantage of. A waiver on there is a waiver on interest and penalty outstanding as at 30th June 2023, where if a taxpayer pays this outstanding tax by 31st December. Now, I think those are the important amendments that I may need to talk about. In terms of what systems we have in place to facilitate collection of these taxes, we have the EFRIS, Electronic Fiscal Receipting and Invoicing Solution. This is used by, it can be used by both VAT registered and non-VAT registered taxpayers. And so we'll continue implementing this system. And then also the digital tracking solution to track, it's a track and trace solution to track excisable products, to give us insight on how much is being produced and to help us ascertain that the declarations being made are accurate. Then we will also, we have the e-tax and integrated tax administration system. There are changes that we are going to make to this to facilitate taxpayers to register, since one of the cries that we should expand the tax base. So we are making it easier for taxpayers to register for taxes by simplifying our tax registration processes. We have instant in, we have web-based forms that taxpayers can use. And then also we are going to amend the rates in the system to reflect the changes that have come within the new laws. I think that is an overview of the amendments. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much, Able, giving us a lot of detail.
Yes.
Those are the things that eventually come to you in the form of you are supposed to pay 20 million. You're supposed to pay 2 million. Now, when it is unclear to people, they will eventually say we are being overtaxed. But I think also Julius raised a very important thing. Sometimes the intermediaries increase the cost. Because you won't tell me the cost on your car was 20 million, when the intermediary who helped me to pay the tax added his 2 million. So the cost to me of the tax is 22. So making us reach you as fast as possible and as plain straightforward as possible are some of the good systems, especially as we get into the digital spaces. Of course, it comes with a lot of other challenges. People don't want to pay the digital EFRIS. They will say, why are you taxing this? Explanations will clarify a number of things, and we are here for that purpose. I'm supposed to get my friend Kagwa to give us his take, because he's in charge of domestic resource mobilization strategy. Most of the things Samuel has raised originated from Kagwa. But what if you guys have some other questions to give us so that Kagwa will respond as he's giving his submission? I'm trying to make sure I don't stand in between people with medical requirements who should be having their lunch now, but also to make sure we get value out of this conversation. So I'm going to pick up maybe 2-3 hands, and then I'll get straight to Kagwa to give his submission and maybe respond to some of those remarks or questions or comments that would have come from the floor, and then we'll go on and be able to wind up this conversation. I see 3 hands on that table. I don't know whether you guys connived to be on the table that raises questions. So I'll pick those 3. I'll pick this hand here, and I'll get to Parliament as I close off the submission from the floor. Parliament, thank you very much for keeping the demonstrations away from the streets. If you had done what somebody has done, we possibly may not be here, but we are here as evidence of your good way of engaging us. Please, your 2 minutes, and then you hand over to your colleagues on that table.
Thank you so much, moderator, ministers available, honorable MPs, protocol observed. I'm Mr. Mwanje Asman. I'm the chairperson, United Tailors and Fashion Designers Association, Uganda. Allow me, on behalf of all tailors and fashion designers, to raise our concerns about the tax regime through which we are paying our import duty, because it is a specific rate which has been at 35% since the year 2020, 2021. Mr. Kagwa, I'm so happy to be before you because at least we've been with you ever since, and we met you all the way through up to now. According to the submission I heard from you, from the first submission you made, I heard you saying the status quo has been maintained on all the other products that you've not mentioned in your first submission. We are really sad that according to the URA statistics, we paid over 43 billion shillings in taxes, which steadily dropped throughout the years. 2023, we paid 22 billion in taxes. I'm failing to understand the kind of calculators and models you use in determining profit and maybe systems of revenue collections. Because if someone has been paying and importing at 25%, and you're getting taxes to a tune of 43 billion, and the number of items are multiplying on the market, and then after some years, the tax collected is dropping to a tune of 19 billion, which 19 billions can be used to construct about 7 to 10 seed schools. I'm quite disappointed that using a yardstick that maybe the policymakers used to set the taxes for imported fabrics that we use, we add value to them. That is number one. We are creating employment and maybe moving to the direction of production. Because a few months ago, I had the president of Uganda presenting to the heads of states in Nairobi, and he was emphasizing the policy and the habit of production, and textiles and garments was one of the focus items that may be pointed at. So as tailors and fashion designers, we deeply think and suppose that being that the government is spending much of our taxpayers' money on training girls into fashion and designing, we thought maybe we could maybe get a special consideration in terms of this importation of fabrics, because basing on the available manufacturers, textile manufacturers or fabrics manufacturers, we strongly believe that they need time to put up their quality of production, because the quality of produced fabrics locally is still low. And in production and in garments and fashion, we think that it takes a lot of fibers and blends of materials. Most of us in this house, I think and believe strongly that we are not putting on items that are made locally. So as we look at how to tax or impose specific rates on these items, we must be considerate of what impact is it actually putting to the players and the sector players. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The microphone goes to your neighbor. Hope he'll be brief.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Hilary Emma Musoke, and I'm glad I'm the Private Secretary to His Excellency, the President in charge of value addition, innovation, and export promotion. I'm glad to be in front of my senior professor, Muhumuza, whom we've interacted for years and as one of my mentors into the field of lecturing. My senior comrade Kagwa, for me, mine is to really bring up a few options for domestic taxation, bearing in mind the wars we are going through, me and you and the president, with the traders who are demonstrating and announcing demonstrations even next month. I think we need to strategically come up with different interventions to widen the tax base, because it is the problem. I was shocked to get a database of people registered for VAT who are on infreeze to be as little as 30,000. And infreeze is causing demonstrations in the country where people are demonstrating when they even don't know why they are demonstrating. Because a drop in the ocean of 30,000 causing traders to cross, and everyone is talking about e-freeze. Is it a disease? Is it a tax? Is it a what? It has really jeopardized the country. What am I saying? We have, for example, million borders in the country. I've seen a number of people coming up with the proposals to see how even borders can contribute to the tax base of the country. How are we going to organize? What strategies do we have to organize such sectors? Like the carpenters, the welders, the restaurants, the brokers. Brokers are very rich. For example, land brokers, car brokers. But where do they contribute to the national treasury? We have seen companies like Gigi trading online, but according to my research, these companies are taking away all the money through digital platforms, but they're not paying any coin. Most of them are not paying back any coin to Uganda. Gigi belongs to an Ukrainian guy, but every time these traders trade on Gigi, money goes in form of mobile money. But then we are putting pressure on these few people. How can we realign and organize the informal sector and the different categories to see that we increase on the tax base so that we have lesser taxes imposed on our Ugandans? Then the last one, sir, Mr. Kagwa, can you please include a budget for massive sensitization of Ugandans in taxation? Put it in Uganda, in Karamoja, in Lutolo, so that people know that they are supposed to pay taxes and why they are paying taxes. Otherwise, like when we got a problem for HIV or measles, government deliberately came up with strategies to sensitize the entire country. Can we make Ugandans understand why they should pay taxes? And can we really show them what the taxes do so that they appreciate paying taxes? Thank you for going on my country.
Thank you. The last turn on that table, and then I'll have two more people and we get back to the panel.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator. All protocol observed. I greet you all. I'm by names of Wasa Samuel. I work as a policy and research officer Uganda Small Scale Industries Association. Unfortunately, I missed to ask Mulangira sooner to elaborate to us how how regulatory policies, their consistency affect the international trade, especially when it comes to East Africa community.
Mulangira should still be in the house. He has heard, he will respond.
Okay, I'll go back to the current panel. My issue goes to the madam from Siatini. I agree that the country do borrow, but I don't think whether borrowing is a problem, but how we do utilize the money. Many countries have developed through borrowing. When you look at Germany after the post-World War II, they used the Marshall Plan and they managed their debt very well. When you look at South Korea after the Korean War, they utilized their aid and loans between 1980 and 1990s, and they developed. Last month, the president of Korea, South Korea, invited African presidents. I saw them clapping. I don't know whether they were able to learn how South Korea developed, but they developed because of loans. When you look at Singapore, since gaining independence in 1965, it has maintained a prudent fiscal policy. So the government of Singapore do finance infrastructure projects and investment in human capital through borrowing, which has helped it to turn the country into a global financial and trade hub. We borrow a lot of money. I don't think whether after coming up with a better strategic plan, for example, we borrowed money to construct Busega Market. The construction of the market started in 2010. We are in 2024. Up to now, the market is not utilized. They used money to construct Busega Market. So the problem might not be borrowing, but how do we utilize the money that we borrow to make sure that we set a platform that will help us from borrowing?
Okay.
Thank you.
At times we say if you don't know how to use money, don't borrow. You have raised a very important point. If we borrowed in 2010 and the market is not there, should we have borrowed?
Thank you so much. My name is Simon Says, and I'm the chairperson of Mbarara City Traders Association. I just had 3 questions and 1 recommendation, but Dr. Chisanja mentioned 1, but I need to emphasize it, the tax education. A number of traders need to understand the thresholds, the turnovers, the VAT input and output. But they are really not reached out to be sensitized on those issues. We have engagements in these beautiful rooms and sittings, but the traders down there in the trading centers are not reached, and they are the real taxpayers who are suffering the consequences. I just request, Mr. Kagwa, you are the expert in this field. Like Dr. Chisanja said, can't you increase a little bit on the budget of the tax education, and we can see how the development comes out? 2, we have been looking at something in abbreviation called TRIP, but it has been in the wardrobe for some good time. We have not seen any changes, and we don't know at this particular time what we are going to do with the correction of this. Is it how many billions? The 31 point something. Are you going to press the same taxpayers, or you have increased at least a good number so that they can also contribute to the tax? And another thing, Mr. Chisanja, now this comes to you, however much you are not on the panel. You always talk to the president. Can't you advise him to do a little bit of politics when it comes to taxation? He's the one who just said that the borders should stop paying tax. So apart from the president mentioning once again that the borders should at least contribute something, they will not bring anything. Because they say, President, if you to gamba and to korechi and to kore for turibam funampora, those people are building houses, those people are doing very big things. They're educating their children, we are sharing the same hospitals, we are sharing the same schools, but they don't contribute anything, including the tax. The tax, I mean the vehicles, not tax as in Musoro, na even abafuga tax. They're also not paying anything. Like in Imbara, they don't pay. But they have been contributing a lot, but the word of the president decreased them from paying the tax. Otherwise, I thank you so much. Mr. Kagwa, take note of those 2 things, and I'm just waiting for the reaction. Thank you.
Your neighbor already has a microphone. I don't want to bring another demonstration in town.
Thank you so much, Professor Muhumuza. My name is Bonnie Kagawa, and I teach at Makerere University Business School, but I also run a safari company called Likana Safaris Uganda. For me, I'll retaliate on the point made by the Honorable Saro Pendi of mineral development being a big source of wealth for this country. But, Mr. Kagwa, tomorrow I'm running a safari for 4 days, 16 Americans arriving by KLM tonight. And they will be in Murchison Falls for 3 nights, and each one has given me around $750. So that's close to $9,500. And URA will come for my commission, and they will tax the VAT on my commission, And then also I will pay some other stakeholders in the value chain. What am I trying to say? Mr. Kagwa, the tax base that these people are telling you to widen is already overstretched. You're taxing the same people. How I wish you allocate more money into tourism marketing. We get many arrivals at the Entebbe International Airport to sell to them gorillas. Beginning July next week, we are selling gorilla permits at $800 per person, foreign non-resident, to see gorillas for 1 hour in Mugahinga National Park, in Nkuringo, in the whole Bwindi sector, Buhoma, Ruhija, Rushaga, and this is a real game changer. How I wish you empower us, the sector players in tourism. In October, I'm going to Rimini in Italy. I've paid 2,500 euros to attend an exhibition to interest travel agents, sign contracts with me, bring me tourists, and I pay tax to government of Uganda, and we improve our country. We can change this economy just through using tourism. I can tell you this, nations like Zambia, Namibia, Rwanda, they are using it. Siaten, thank you so much. You're articulating issues of debt. The best way to beat debt out of us is get Forex by engaging more in export trading, which is tourism in this country. I tell you, this is a game changer and we are not talking about it. I thank you for the progress you've made in the tourism sector. The PSST gave us close to 400 billion and then 1.6 trillion indirectly into infrastructure development, which can also spark tourism development. But we need more. Through Uganda Tourism Board, give those guys money. Let me tell you, you will definitely see change in this economy. Thank you so much. And URA, we are giving you your taxes. We are paying VAT honestly and religiously. We are paying income tax. By 30th, we put in our provisions. We pay all our taxes from the tourism sector. We are paying every single money to Uganda Wildlife Authority through park entrances. Each foreign non-resident that goes through Murchison Falls pays $45 for 24 hours. So that's what we are talking about. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kagaba, for Kugaba. Yes, you were the last.
Thank you, the moderator. I have one question to URA in relation to the harsh tax collection measures. You are aware that in West Nile, within 2 weeks, we lost more than 5 people who were shot by URA tax operatives, and then over 20 were injured. URA, can we have a face, a human face, when we are collecting these taxes? Because at the end of it, you are killing a border cyclist who, in fact, would even pay very little money in tax, but after the assassination, the same URA now pays over 50 million. Can we have a human face? What strategies do we have to really reduce on such harsh measurement of tax collection? Related to that, DRC is now a member of the East African community. Most of the numberless motorcycles which flood West Nile region come from the DRC. Why can't we come up with the measures to register these motorcycles such that we avoid the motorcycles coming to the country when they are not registered in the country's number plates? Mr. Kagwa, thank you very much for being here, and we listened to you. One of my colleagues alluded to the issue of loans that we borrow. We have a lot of loans borrowed in this country which are not utilized or not properly utilized. You are aware that about 80 loans which were borrowed for projects in Karamoja have not been implemented and their periods have expired. You are aware of so many loans. I don't remember any loan in this country that has performed to 100%. You are aware of all those messes. Why do you burden this country to borrow when you are not ready for implementation? We have right now loans like the Uganda Secondary Education Expansion Project. You claim as Minister of Finance that you have the funds. We are almost coming to the expiry of this loan term. We have not implemented any single project. Why do we borrow when we are not ready? At the end of it, it gives a lot of burden to the country. Related to that, across the country, we have so many stalled projects, and these are all World Bank or external funded projects. There are those which have expired, like the Agriculture Cluster Development Project. That is one loan that has never almost performed in this country. What plans do you have to complete such projects where you have the money is mismanaged, and the project is stalled? What do you have in plan to see that such projects are completed? Lastly, it is the Minister of Finance that gives the IPFs and what have you, the ministerial policy statements. Now, when we do all the due diligence, you come through Parliament and the rest of it. But when it comes to budget cuts, you cut the budgets affecting the ministries, departments, and agencies without sometimes the knowledge of the Parliament that approves the budget. Why do we have all such inconsistencies? And I think I want to end by requesting that we need to have regional balance when it comes to resource allocation. Because in this country, we have regions where people are now fighting for water, for animals. But we have regions where people recycle used dirty water for other domestic cores. Can we have regional balance when it comes to resource allocation? Thank you. I'm Etuka Isaac Joaquino, the Member of Parliament for Upper Madi County.
Honorable Agnes, I wanted to reserve you for a special role so that you can complete your notes and have all the time you'll need. I certainly see your interest. Yes, sir. Let's
Thank
take a
you
few
very
minutes.
much. I'm Emmanuel Ongierto Obonyo, the MP for Jonam in Pakwach District. Mine is a fairly simple one, but one that has caused problems. And it is about the tax bills. From my sister, the lady in yellow, she made an appeal, which is an appeal for everybody, that since we are in this East Africa community, we expect some harmonization of the taxes. And if that is being done, you would expect that even at the point of the bills, the tax bills, there should be some kind of consistency. Before the approval of the budget for actually every year, we have tax bills coming through in our parliament. And for the last one, we also had tax bills that were approved, but they went quietly and silently. Now, for our sister country, Kenya, we see fire. We see death. I am asking myself, and I'm asking whoever is concerned within here, is there any way the technical people within Ministry of Finance in Uganda and across the East African countries, do they sometimes sit down and look at these things so that when, as a country, Uganda, we are processing the tax bills, Kenya is doing so, Tanzania and the other East Africa community members, there is some kind of harmonization so that at the implementation level, at the point where now Revenue Authority is implementing, there is some kind of similarity. Because I feel bad that we are talking about taxes. In Uganda, things go quiet. And in Kenya, there is fire. People are dying. What is happening? Are we harmonizing? Are we speaking to each other? That is the point I wanted to bring across. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Right Honorable, I'm compelled to pick the honorables now as I wind up on the floor. Then I'll get back this side. Let's take the microphone. I'm also compelled here to say one slot will go to URA, which will be literally to Rubanga. I've not had many things with, with Samuel. And then after Rubanga, my friend will wind up, and then I'll get to Kagwa to wind it up.
Thank you, moderator, and the members present. I have one question to ask. I am Lokwang Phillips Ilukol, Member of Parliament, Napore West Constituency, Karenga, and eventually Sukas Karamoja. The question I want to ask is on URA. Thank you for the good work that you are doing to ensure that you are giving the collections for the running of this country. But I want to ask on the tax administration. In most cases, through my own research, you give tenders to entities to collect taxes on your behalf, and you give the target of the particular amount to these entities. These entities do good work, and in most cases, they surpass the target. What happens to the extra? Is it declared to government or otherwise? Thank you very much.
Right. When honorable members speak, you only want to get to the technocrats to give responses. Those are quite often the people who appear in their committees, and they give technical responses. I'm not sure whether Mrs. Hilda Mukuru, you have anything to respond to?
Yes, there is a gentleman that asked.
Let's just be quick on that, and then I'll go to Mr. Rubanga.
How do we utilize borrowed funds, citing that debt is not bad? Actually, debt is not bad. And I don't think we as Siatini, we've come out to say that debt is bad. No. That is why I said citizens need to follow up on their revenues. Why? Because government has borrowed, which monies are being paid back using the domestic revenues. So how do we utilize borrowed funds? Thank God also Mr. Kagwa is here, but I'll just give a snip. In 2015, the World Bank came out to tell us that for every dollar we invest here, we only get 0.7 of a dollar, implying that even the money we've invested, we've not actually recovered, citing issues of poor project management, corruption, and several other public investment management problems. So government came up with what we call the public investment management system, but this is under the PIMS unit, right? So it's under the Ministry of Finance. So it is the Public Investment Management Unit. So this one looks at how do we actually have debt borrowed for only ready projects. Yes, like I noted earlier, we have what we call the frameworks that govern borrowing, and Uganda is not actually short of the laws. The public debt management framework clearly spells out on when we should borrow and from whom and why we should borrow. So there are several principles on domestic borrowing, but also on external borrowing. And this requires that all projects should undergo the PIMS system, and debt should be acquired for only ready projects that have gone through feasibility analysis. I heard of someone mentioning of a market that was not complete after 10 years. The questions we should ask ourselves as citizens: were the stakeholders consulted? There is a famous one that we usually cite on the Wandegeya market. I don't know if you've had a chance to go to the highest floor of these markets, but also the markets in the various cities. These are all USMID funds which were actually borrowed. But why aren't people utilizing these? You usually find issues of high costs, yeah? High costs of rent, you know, such things. Why? Probably because the stakeholders that would utilize these projects have not been consulted. But also you remember the famous one on the road where the cultural leaders came out to contest that a given tree should not be removed for right of way. All these clearly show that there are loopholes in this system, that stakeholders are not consulted, or even the utilization bit comes with a feasibility analysis. Have we actually known whether we shall get the intended return from a various loan project?
Okay.
So my key parting notes, one thing, I want all citizens to join us to come out and actually monitor the debt-funded projects. Let us not wait to see Auditor General coming to tell us that government has paid such and such amount in commitment fees because of this non-performing project. But also now my worry is on the side of the political arm, we have our parliamentarians here and also our technical people from the Ministry of Finance. He noted that there is a...
Just 1 minute.
Yes, there is a measure on exemption for hospital developers, the specialized hospitals. And this caught my attention. I remember the famous Luvoa, and I continually see medical tourism. So hope this measure, as the measure is coming up, citizens need to actually monitor who are the investors that are actually going to gain from these tax exemptions, because we are wasting a lot of money in tax expenditures that have not yielded much, yet we are grappling with debt. Thank you.
I think that goes to Kagaba as well. People should not only come here to see gorillas. Medical tourism is making a lot of money for India, for Turkey. Besides gorillas, where else can we improve and make some money? I'm tempted to, because I promised Rubanga, you have so many things. I was about to send all those people who asked you questions to have lunch with you on the same table, so that you answer them there. But is there one thing among the many, or else I'm going to give Kagwa to handle all the questions related to tax as we close off the panel? Just one of those things that you really think, if you don't talk to it.
Okay, maybe, thank you, moderator. And one, I want to maybe say that all the recommendations some of you have made are very good recommendations that we've taken note of. But quickly, like you asked me, what one thing I may speak into, maybe two. Allow me one or two. Just in 1 minute.
As long as you squeeze them in 1 minute, it's okay.
Exactly. Now, there was a question that Julius raised about ease of paying taxes. Why don't we allow people pay taxes by themselves? I thought that one I may need to handle it myself. I mean, to clear. I didn't want to give it to to my minister.
Go
now,
on.
one is that, you see, accountability for taxpayers' goods is very important. And within the EAC framework, there's a provision that we need to have clearing agents. The commission has to license someone for purpose of clearing. And this is for purpose of establishing certainty and monitoring of the clearance. However, when you're a traveler, at the borders we've got what we call the simplified trade regime. Like if you've got one item, two items, you're allowed to clear them yourselves. You don't need to actually have an agent. In fact, it provides that the customs officers can capture for you the declaration. So those are cases we have, one or two. Even at the airports, I'm sure you've traveled. You don't need an agent. If you've got something that is $500 and below, you clear. So we have that provision at the borders, especially under the simplified trade regime. You're allowed to clear. You're right in that. That one, you don't have to get an agent. But the bigger ones is where we need an agent. Then maybe lastly, on the issue of digitization, IFRIS, I know the Honorable Minister, represented by Mr. Kagwa, will talk. The last one was something from the Honorable Member of Parliament for Arua. I thought that moderator is very important for me to talk to. One, as you are, we want to apologize for any kind of high-handedness. It is not really in our intention to actually cause injury and put a bad face. However, I want to say that there are two things that happened. As you are a Honorable Member of Parliament, you are aware the Commissioner General and the Honorable Minister of State in charge of general duties camped in Arua region for almost about a week or more. Now, the whole purpose of that was to build bridges, to be able to engage, and we believe indeed to hear from the community, engage with them, and have more time to sensitize. I remember in Arua one time when I went, they asked me that question. So I do take note of that, but we are, as URA, taking it as a serious. We have not really in the interest also of the UPDF to have soldiers who are trigger happy. That is something that we as government take it seriously, and we are continuing to engage with the community. We do agree it's not a good thing for people to die. But allow me kindly to also say that as political leaders, you have a very big role to play. In really, I was there in Arua, one of them was saying that let me tell you, smuggling will never stop. This is our way of life. This is our way of living. We are not going to stop it. Now, it was a very difficult conversation. But so I think it's both of us, as government and the political leadership, we need to work together to sensitize our people on their tax obligations. But we do agree and we apologize and we are working out to do our best and even changing some leadership in those areas. So I think I want to end on that note. Then I will allow maybe as you said rightly, the rest of the tax issues like, involving the local government to collect taxes, things like on the textiles issue. I think even the IFRIS issue, you're aware the president is planning to meet the traders on the 31st July. So I think also my honorable minister will speak into it. And then also in terms of the technology, maybe my colleague, if he has a chance, but that is really what I want to summarize on. I submit. Thank you.
Thank you. Lunch is about to be served, so if you still have issues with those fellows, free seating for lunch. You'll get some good advice there, but don't throw water at each other. It's for drinking. So when you disagree on that table, continue with another table. Mr. Kagwa, I think now you see why I reserved you last, before I can come to Honorable Kunihira to give us her input and our closing part for the day. Feel free to choose a few things. You have like 3 to 4, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Mumza, and I thank everybody for coming here and trying to discuss and understand the budget. One is that for the first time since I started working in the Ministry of Finance so many years ago, we had a standing ovation when the minister outlined the budget speech, what is going to happen. For anyone who watched at least that must have known that this next year's budget has been well received by everybody. Even His Excellency the President said, I have nothing useful to add on this budget because it shows the strategic direction of where we are going. Having said that, I've had all these many things. I will start maybe with Madame Mariam Babu. She's raised a number of important points. I think even some of which touch what our Honorable Emmanuel has said. The double taxation, the informal fees, the informal way of doing business, and then the need to harmonize taxes in the region. One, with how do we relate with you? I think let's have an association of traders. I don't want to call you informal traders, but cross-border traders, with whom we can talk and have a good discussion. We can't talk to each and every single trader, so that you come with your issues and we try to see how to resolve them. You can also use Julius here, because he's the voice of the voiceless, to be able to come forth with your issues and we see how to resolve them. That's what I can say generally. But in terms of how do we harmonize our domestic taxes so that the VAT is 18%, maybe 16% across the board. it depends on the tax base in a country and what the country wants to achieve. Tanzania's tax rate is 20% VAT. Kenya is 16%, but they also have a levy, a training levy of 2%, which makes it 18% VAT for at least goods that are manufactured in Kenya. And there are very, very many levies which we don't have. If you look at imports, they have the 1.5 infrastructure levy, they have 0.5 declaration fee, they have so many various rates even on imports that we don't have. So if you are looking at only one tax and you say VAT, then you miss the point because it's not the only tax that comes in. But as I said, it's important if we could reach an agreement, but it's difficult. Because right now, even on import duty, where we say, what rates can we have on goods that are coming outside the region into the region, whereas we agreed on 0, 10, 25, and 35, we don't apply that regime. That's why when I was talking, I said we have some things called stays of application, where countries decide unilaterally and said, for us, we are not going to have to apply 25% on this product. We are applying a 10. We are not going to apply 10. We are applying a 35. So there is still that, and it's something that we are discussing. And hopefully, maybe in 3-4 years, we may reach there, where we harmonize our tax regime within East Africa. But it's still a very difficult thing to do. Hilda mentioned something, I don't know where she got it from, that intrigued me on debt, about our commitment fees being 1.7 trillion. From my our office, for example, this year we have paid only 21.7 billion in commitment fees.
Auditor General's report?
Yes, I'm saying what I have.
Okay.
You can cite the Auditor General, but I'm citing what happens in the office, the people who pay. That's really a big number. But also, we had been talking, what are we using this money for? 29% of the borrowed funds have been used in transport infrastructure. 28% is in energy infrastructure. We can say a lot of things about our borrowing, but we must be happy that at least we have some electricity. We don't have these outages that are happening in big countries like South Africa. We don't ration. I think there is something, and that money has come out of the borrowed money. We have borrowed money for the national backbone infrastructure, and I can see a lot of people are WhatsApping, using internet. Really, this is the money we have borrowed. That's how you're developing, that you can be able to use all this technology. It's about that. We have borrowed money for agro-industrialization, we have borrowed money for industrial parks, and a lot of things. And this money has actually done some good work. There's money that we borrowed before that has actually not been utilized. And a number of reasons which I don't want to go into now, but we are saying going forward, like you rightly mentioned, Hilda, we are not borrowing for projects that are not ready, that have no pre-feasibility studies, that have no feasibility studies. So when you are looking at new borrowing, before we borrow, the projects must be ready, and we go forward. The other ones are really legacy issues that we are grappling with, but we are going to resolve them. Mr. Mwanje, on textiles, I don't want to go into that because we are really having discussions. We can have more discussions during lunchtime. But we are discussing at the highest level. HE met you, and he has promised to meet you again. So I don't want to say we are going to do something before an agreement has been reached between you and the highest office. So let us wait until that is resolved. But I also want to assure you that sensitization, and I think a lot of people have talked about it, tax education, that you textiles manufacturers, there is a remission for you where you wouldn't pay that tax. You look at it and see whether you can fit into that. A lot of textiles manufacturers here have taken advantage of that remission scheme. So I would expect you also to look at that. There was an issue by Mr. Jemba on, I think you made comments, and they were very good comments, which I think we are going to take forward because we have been discussing them and we'll continue having these very wonderful discussions. Thank you so much. I think Josephine from ULGA, on how do we harmonize property tax and rental tax? What do we do? What are the strategies for boosting tourism by local governments? How can this happen? How can we? And you have also talked about the provision for funds for road infrastructure. Maybe that one I can assure you that for tourism we are not doing 100%, but we are going to finance Kisoro, Bunyonyi Road, Kisoro, Magahinga Road, National Park Road. Those are in the budget. We are rehabilitating over 10,000 kilometers of national and country access roads. That's also in the budget. That should help. Of course, Karenga Kidepo is there, and we are also trying to extend the national backbone infrastructure so that this will happen. But for local governments, we want to continue sitting with you and see how we can collect more revenues from your side. One of the things that we are looking at is a principle called tax farming. How can local governments collect tax on our behalf for a commission? Because URA can't reach everywhere in these local governments, but maybe that's an area. Local governments, we are also having a challenge from the tourism sector. Says we are overtaxing them. I think the tourism sector has the most number of taxes in this country. You pay a license to be a local government license to operate. You pay a hotel license to operate. You pay a swimming pool license. You pay a food license for you to have a restaurant. You pay some inspection fees for your lift. You pay a lift license. You pay so many licenses. We are trying to see how all these ones can be at least amalgamated so that you don't pay. But local governments, I think, we should be able to work with you through the Local Governments Commission and see what we can do.
The last one, sir.
I think my time is up. Usia, I think someone from Usia, that is Samuel Bossa, talked about consistency of regulatory policies. I've not seen much difference in regulatory policies. They are the same. Where there is a problem with consistency, please show it to us, and then we'll come on that. And then, Michael, you talked about taxpayer education. We have provided funding. And this is really URA. They are designing proper tax education programs. When you look at their budget, the money is there. But It's the design. And then also I'm appealing to taxpayers that when there is this tax education, please don't send your accountants, your managers, go there. If you at least send, let them accompany you, but let them not go there and listen. And this is the problem we have also had with IFRIS, that managers and accountants and other staff are the ones who go. The owners of the businesses don't go there. So URA is designing a proper tax education system, and I'm appealing to taxpayers to really take keen interest and attend. For what I have not answered, sir, I think we shall.
They are going to have lunch with you
at that appropriate time. Thank you so much for listening to me.
And I want to say thank you everybody who has persisted through this marathon. We started 1 hour late, so we are 30 minutes late. Because you ate into our 1 hour, we have eaten into 30 minutes of your time. Panelists, please resume your seats. As we wind up on this, I've been guided that Honorable Agnes Kunihia, who represents the workers in Parliament, is going to come and give us the final remarks. Yatin, URA, Minister of Finance, and partners, thank you very much for this. I don't want to do your duty. After Honorable Agnes Kunihira, you will still come and do your duty, Mr. Kafero, and your partners. Honorable, you have 2 duties: to tell us what you came to tell us, and then next, the other duty is to tell us how do we go from here. Honorable.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mumuza. I want to thank the organizations that have organized this dialogue, that is URA, Satien, and the Ministry of Finance. I want to thank everyone who has remained here calm to listen. That shows how important issues of taxes in the country are serious. I want also to raise some few issues that I had wanted to bring out earlier before I was given this opportunity to close this meeting. My first concern was raised by Mr. Suna when he talked about issues of finance, illicit finance flows. And in most cases, you talk about money coming from outside the country. But what are we doing about the monies that are within our houses, being got from illegal dealings, maybe corruption, the proceedings from corruption? Yesterday I was even thinking, how come Minister of Finance has not come out to suggest that we change money, and maybe the minimum amount of money that the person should bring in cash should not be beyond 20 million. If you have anything above that, put it on your account. Then we shall know what have you traded to have $1 billion in the house. So I don't know why these planners, but also I thought over it that it's most of you people who have that money in your houses, so you cannot bring out such a suggestions. My other concern was to do with the agricultural commercialization. I'm wondering what the ministry is planning, Ministry of Finance, because your economic planning also is part of you. You have given people money, including the PDM money. I'm already seeing, if you move around, Matoke now is March, so people are throwing ripe bananas because the consumption is low. Now with all the money you are injecting in the economy for purposes of agriculture, what other strategies do you have in terms of marketing the products and storage? So first thing first, I think you should be always planning to achieve, not for wastage. So you may never recover the money you have put out there for PDM if we don't plan for marketing and storage. That was another issue. My other issue was to do with payee, Mr. Kagwa, pay as you earn. You have concentrated on taxing the fewer people you have on the payrolls in some companies, in government. We have continued to have industries coming up. Have you done your research to know how many workers are there? Every company we try to visit, you find they have only 50 people on a taxable payroll. Then you find they have around 1,500, 2,000 workers. They are not anywhere in their system. Maybe you could consult URA to help you with an IFRS-like system that every employer should have all workers, whether casual, whether what. They should be on the payroll or in the system of that company. Because some are earning more than 500, but they are termed as casuals. So you cannot tax them because they are casual workers. Yet, you are taxing the lowest paid person who is earning above 235 as pay as you earn. And yet, it is the easiest tax you can get because with less hassling, you can charge us as you have been doing to all workers, but you are leaving out the biggest numbers of workers because as government, we have encouraged casualization and the employers are taking advantage of that system, not only to run away from pay as you earn, but even other areas like saving for the workers, NSSF, and other rates of workers. So those are the three key areas I thought I would bring out to you as a person in charge of policy, because it's for you specifically, not URA. URA is a taxman who collects, but you put in place policies, and you are putting in place unfair policies to tax me who is on a payroll earning 275, and you leave a person earning $1 million, but because that person is termed as a casual, they are not taxed. So those are the key areas. With those few issues, I would like to thank everyone who has taken time to stay around, listen in, and I think Dr. Mhumza, this conversation is always important. I always take time to listen to him whenever he's talking of issues of economics, because some of us are not in that area, but we take time to learn. So I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Satyen for always bringing us on board in terms of helping us to understand the budget, issues of taxation. So we are seeking and looking forward to always be part of this conversation. I want to thank the URA. Of course, you are doing your responsibility as per the law to collect. And the lady from Busia told you our concern, even this morning as I was coming from Chira, the dust on the roads. What is happening? URA is collecting a lot of money. That's why the members are not appreciating. The public is not appreciating paying tax, because how do you pay tax and pass through roads as if, even my road from the village is better, Kamwenge Road, but how can we be in town around Wakiso area and Kampala, and we are moving in the worst roads ever? We want to appeal to the implementers of government policies, as Mr. Kagwa said, please take serious note of this. If you are not releasing funds, please help us to release funds. Even the person was talking about tourists. The other day, read in the papers, there are some tourists who got issues after hitting a pothole around the northern route. So we are even going to lose the tourists because of bad roads. Why should I come to Uganda and yet I can go to Kenya where the roads are smooth, clean? They don't even allow a dirty car to enter town. So somebody would even prefer to go to Rwanda, come to Chisora and view your gorillas and go back and stay in Rwanda because of the roads now mixed up with the motorcycles. If you move around Kampala, even me, I feel ashamed even to say that is our city. It is motorcycles and bad roads. So I want to thank everyone, and I'm looking forward for this conversation in the near future. And With those few remarks, I will want to use this opportunity to close this meeting, today's dialogue, and maybe invite you for lunch. Thank you so much.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, it's not a speech, just some communication and recognition, because the moderator mentioned columns, so I thought it's about time for me to share a few remarks in terms of recognition. So I would like to recognize all the National Budget Month partners who made this possible, because it's not only CRTV, Uganda Revenue Authority, Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, but we were also working in close collaboration with other National Budget Month partners, including CSBAG in attendance, EPRC, among others. So this is a team spirit, and we're in this together, not alone as the organizers of this dialogue. And I believe we've all heard, and the policymakers too have heard, the stakeholders have spoken. A number of issues have emerged from this conversation, so it's continuous work that we have to do. And the conversation cannot stop here, it has to continue. But I cannot end by recognizing the CRTV team. I request that you stand up for recognition. You made this possible. Thank you so much. To the URA team, thank you for working closely with us. And to Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, we truly appreciate that you opened your doors for CRTV and other civil society organizations to contribute to shaping fiscal policies, but also to develop our country and the region at large. And to the members of parliament, we appreciate you and thank you for representing your constituencies effectively, because when we engage you, we have engaged so many other stakeholders. And also the fact that you're our champions in parliament, we believe that the message will go on to other members of parliament. Thank you so much. I bring you warm greetings from CRTV's Executive Director, Ms. Jane Nalunga. She's here in spirit and ably represented. Thank you.